today. And Dan, we go way back, about, I think, 12 years. And this is before he had his gallery and doing all these awesome things in Ojai. But I just want to give you a little idea of who Dan is. And Dan, if you've ever had the opportunity to walk into his gallery, I know I've had a lot of people tell me how amazing it is. He's done such a beautiful job. He's in such a beautiful part of the country too. I think a lot of people from LA like to come up and get away from the craziness, come and play some golf, do a little biking, and then buy a painting or two. Is that?
That's right. Yeah. Or 3, if I can get him to buy 3.
Thing, right? Well, I know Dan, he's very busy right now. He just told me he's working on, or just finishing up, a couple of commissions. You've got a workshop that is full, right? Sold out workshop next week.
Yep, coming up in about a week and a half. Yep.
Amazing. And he just launched a new course, Landscape Painting Fundamentals, on Sentient Academy. And I have to say, one thing that really is great about the way Dan teaches this course is just he has really strong design fundamentals. And you have a background in illustration and graphic design, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I went to school at Pensacola Christian College in Florida, which was a commercial art program, and really geared toward illustration and graphic design. There was really only one instructor there who had fine art experience. And I remember we were all really amazed by his ability, but we just learned hardly anything about fine art. It was all from this illustration perspective. And so it really, I didn't grow up around art or galleries. And so that was kind of my first foray into sort of learning what was possible with art. And so I kind of went through that program and found that I really enjoyed the painting and drawing portion, because they did teach us, starting from the drawing perspective, measuring and all of that with portraits and still lives and things. So it was all just with that illustration perspective though. And so when I graduated, I moved back to Colorado, where I was from, and just got a job doing graphic design, because I didn't know that I could just jump in and become a full-time illustrator. And I, again, didn't know you could be a fine artist. So I just got a job doing graphic design and was painting on the side. I did portraits for people here and there, just sort of kind of for fun. I still enjoyed painting. And really, that's actually when I kind of picked up plein air painting too. And I can't even remember exactly what prompted me to do that, other than just being in Colorado, where there are beautiful landscapes. But something, I remember going out one time right at the end of college with some friends, and we all were like, we're gonna go paint outside. Let's go paint outside. We didn't have any classes in that. But just before we graduated, we were like, let's go do this. We're gonna go paint outside. We got our like 16 by 20 canvases and easels out, and went for it. And it was a disaster. But I knew even after then I moved back to Colorado, I thought, I got to get outside and paint, in person. And I knew that there was a lot to be learned from exploring the real landscape out there. So I was trying to do that and just doing portraits on the side. So that was kind of what I was doing for a while at that stage.
Well, one thing I find that's interesting, as you talk about that, I've seen a number of artists that are really attracted to the landscape that have a design background or a strong graphic design. And I have my thoughts about it. I'm curious if you see a connection there, what the landscape kind of offers, and having that kind of background. What does that? Is there something that coincides, or that? Because a lot of times we talk about light and color,
right,
when you go out plein air painting, but there's this other aspect of, design, right?
Right. Yeah, I think from what I've discovered in just my journey up to this point is that the more drawing and painting and looking you do, the more possibilities you start to see. And I feel like if you're near an open landscape, a park or a national forest or, anything that you have nearby, there's just so many possibilities there. And I think it eliminates, there's no buildings, there's fewer people. It's just shapes of trees and meadows and mountains and whatever you have. And so I think you start to see more and more. And often I find that it is a design idea that attracts me many times when I'm out, doing that outdoor search. And I feel like with the plein air painting, you have a spontaneity, element as well, where you aren't doing any pre-planning. You're just sort of looking, and then you're responding to something that you find, which either resonates in that design realm, or maybe it's a value contrast situation that attracts your attention, or it's a color relationship that you like. And what I've discovered is helpful in even sharing with students is figure out, answer that question. What is it that's attracting you to the scene that you're choosing to paint? If you can identify what is calling you to paint it, that helps you answer a lot of questions and solve a lot of the problems that go into then making it into a piece of art, choosing how you're going to lay it out, what you're going to focus on, and all of that stuff. So I think there is a big design influence for sure in laying out those shapes, because you're presented with different shapes every time, and you've got to figure out, how can I arrange these things or focus in a way that's going to pull off this idea the best to the viewer. I'm sure you find that too, Brian.
Well, I really admire the way you see those shapes. You have a really strong attention to how each of those shapes relate to each other. And not only that, I think you also play with the different, like you say, different possibilities. You're not just merely copying nature. You'll do high key things, or like your sunset pieces will be put into kind of an interesting color structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed, just there's some creativity there, observation, but also you don't let it kind of dominate you, right? You're kind of imposing your will on it.
Well, you just have to make sure you don't paint the bad shapes, only the good shapes. No. Those sunset pieces have been a lot of fun for that reason, because they really are simple in design. They're just masses of light and dark, and then you can push the color. But I found that they come together pretty quickly compared to a pure, realistic, refined sort of landscape where you've got to get all those shapes right, or else you're going to have trouble, with your perspective or things like that. But those sunset ones are simpler. So it really has allowed me to focus on masses and balance and those kinds of ideas, which is nice.
Well, I think you say they're simpler, but as somebody that studied graphic design and is trained, I know a lot of people will really struggle with even the shapes of trees and
oh yeah,
getting those all those shapes to work together. There's a lot of shuffling around that you have to do to make those things work. You pay a lot of attention to the spaces between the positive and negative space.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
I noticed you have a figure in the back, one of the paintings that's right behind
Oh
you.
yeah. Yeah.
When I first met Dan, this was back probably maybe 2008-ish.
Yeah, probably something like that.
And I remember we were at a plein air show with the Rocky Mountain plein air painters in Crested Butte, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was very distinctive about what Dan was doing is he would add figures into his plein air thing that made everybody else jealous. So I want to talk a little about that. But your wife was kind enough to pose for you during those things. So you've been a busy guy. You also have a family too, and it seems like you've incorporated them in a lot of your work. I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yeah. I think it's been sort of just a natural thing, cheap models. But no, I've been thankful that they've been willing to be painted. And my wife is actually an artist too. She went to school for graphic design and paints and photographs and does all sorts of, other. She's doing a whole series right now of monotype printing, which has been really a cool creative process to watch. So anyway, she's very creative too, and it's been a neat fit, for us to be able to have that in common. And yeah, as far as
did you meet
no, we actually met at a graphic design job. While I was right after college, a few years after college, I was working for a book publisher as a graphic designer, and she got a job at the same place. So that's how we met. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, and our plan was that I would eventually start painting. I mean, that's really what I found that I wanted to do once I had been working in graphic design for a couple of years. It was fine, but I ended up finding this other little art school in Colorado Springs that was just started by an artist who would bring in workshop instructors, some of the more famous ones. And that was the first place that I actually met artists that were painting for galleries. And that was right around 2000, 99, 2000. So Matt Smith and Skip Whitcomb, I took both of those guys' workshops. And I knew at that point, like that was the direction that I wanted to go if I could. So I just started painting a lot more. And so when my wife, Sarah, and I got married, I mean, we talked about that a lot. And I thought I would want to just paint, if I could try to make a go of it. And ideally be able to support us someday, as an artist. And so that sort of changed the direction. And from going all the way back to college, I really did enjoy portrait drawing and painting. And so I knew that was something I wanted to incorporate into my work, although the landscape became kind of the other component. And so somewhere along the line there, I sort of realized if I could combine those two things and have figures in the landscape, I could enjoy both of those things together. And my thinking was, this might be something sort of unique, in the marketplace, not just a landscape or just a portrait, but the combination. And I thought, well, maybe it would stand out in galleries. And so I really tried pushing that idea, and still am to an extent, but I really pushed it. That was kind of my primary thing for several years. Mm-hmm. And, I had some success with it. It never caught on to my, to the extent that it was very ongoing, still kind of up and down. And so that was a challenge. And that's where probably also kind of kept me going after just the landscape, pure landscapes too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the family element has been important and a challenging part to an extent to balance. I'm sure you find that too, Brian, because you want to have that meaningful family time. And you want to also, if you have kids, encourage your kids to, explore their creativity as well. But you also have to have that time to work. And I think painting is a pretty solitary endeavor for most artists. I think most of us, yeah, you can paint in a group, but you probably do your best work by yourself when you're really able to quietly think and focus and plan and do your work that way. So once, I know we're going to talk more about the gallery, but once we did open the gallery, we sort of discovered that it just works better if I work the gallery and my family does their thing at home, so that we have our separate time, at least to try to balance that work and family aspect.
Do you feel like when you go home, because obviously a gallery is not part of your home. I know some artists have a situation where they have a gallery kind of built in part of their home.
Right.
And you're kind of off site, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps to just have that separation because you come to work and then you can kind of leave.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, because when we first moved here, I mean, our oldest was just one. And we thought, well, we can just, we'll have him in the gallery and in his little playpen. And, my wife was here too, and we'd all just kind of be here together. And it became apparent pretty quick that our son was not gonna not gonna last too long in the little gallery, but before he just went crazy. And so we thought, it's gonna be better to just have Sarah stay at home with him, and have that separate time. Even before I had the gallery, I did have a studio outside of our home in a different place in Colorado Springs, and so I would go back and forth, and there's pros and cons there too, depending on how much travel time you have in between. I was going about a half hour each way, which I finally realized that's an hour a day I'm using just driving back and forth to paint. And so I thought I should just bring my stuff home. And so I used a separate bedroom at that point, which worked okay too. But I think still, if you can have a space dedicated to your work, it not only gives you a, kind of a place to focus, but it also keeps you from having to get everything out every time. If you're always having to put stuff away and get it out whenever you're wanting to go work, it makes it hard to want to go work because you got to get all your stuff out. So if you can, even if you have just a small house and you have to use a portion of a bedroom, try to have a space where you can have a little place set up, because if you can jump in for a half hour and do some drawing or something without having to get everything out and put it all away. And we're still dealing with that challenge at our house too for my wife. But yeah, it's important, I think, to be able to have the space to create in a way that you can access it readily.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember hearing a study, they talk about friction. The more friction there is in accomplishing a task, the less likely you can do it. And that they would track people going to the gym and how many miles away the gym was from your house. And you have even 5 miles to the gym, and it reduces people's desire to go to the gym. And it's one of the studies of this idea of, I guess, friction, where the easier you can make it to jump in and do it.
Well, and I should put a plug in for your Strata easel. I think having a setup that you're excited about too makes a difference. Like I remember when I don't have your Strata, but I have the open box amp, and when I first got that, I was so excited. Like I had been using one of those old French easels before that, and just having like a cool workable setup made a huge difference for me too. Just having it in a backpack ready to go, it made me want to go paint more. So not only the space, but some equipment that you enjoy using, I think makes a difference too. So great job with you, designing and doing that whole product with Strata. That's great.
Hey, well, I appreciate that plug.
Yeah. I mean, you have your shirt, so it's kind of obvious, but.
Well, that's I think that's certainly true. I know with biking, it's interesting. Bikes nowadays are about $6,000 if you want a really good one. And you know a little bit about biking, I'm sure. And I'm curious. And one thing I've found is that I actually do a lot more biking, to your point. Because I rented a really nice bike the other day, and my wife went on it. My son did too, to try it out. And it's just so nice. It's got the shocks on both wheels and on the seat, and it's super light. And I'm curious. I bet you have a really nice bike. You're a biker,
spoils right? You. Yeah. Well, I have a pretty good one. I had a really nice one that I used for many years, and it started breaking down. It was a full suspension mountain bike, and so I ended up realizing at that point how much had changed from when I first got that bike to the point where I was, and going, well, now they've redesigned all these elements of the bike, and so you couldn't necessarily even start replacing things. You have to just like get a new bike almost. So I ended up getting one on Craigslist, which was a better, a better way to get one cheaper. But yeah, I know what you mean. When you ride one of those good ones, it makes a huge difference in wanting to ride it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I'm curious because you're kind of in Bike Central, from what I know, and Golf Central maybe. I'm wondering how you went from Florida to Colorado, all the way over to California. Just kind of
Okay, yeah.
journey a little bit.
Well, I was actually born in New Mexico, and then moved to Colorado. So I only went to Florida for college. So I was only there for college. Yeah, and then went back to Colorado, where I had been before. So I've been in the Southwest for most of my life, and that's kind of I've really enjoyed this part of the country, and I had been on some trips to California, and it's just one of those places that has so much variety of subject matter to paint that for a lot of painters it's like, ooh, let's go paint California. It's exciting. And so I know you were in California too, and so for me, when I started looking for places to open my gallery, which I can talk about that a little bit more too, I started looking in the Southwest. Like that was sort of the first place I wanted to explore. And you want me to talk about that now? Like,
I think
kind of what went into that?
To find out kind of that process, because it's not easy. It's a huge commitment. I mean, you're moving your family,
right?
And you're also kind of saying, hey, I'm gonna kind of stay here for a while and make it an enormous kind of commitment. So I'm just, I'd love to kind of talk through that process, or how you guys went, what you thought about it.
So we, my wife and I married, and then I pretty soon after quit my graphic design job and just started painting. I had gotten into some galleries already, so I was just wanting to focus more, paint more. And I knew I had friends. I met you. I had some other friends out in Colorado that were making that work. They were selling through galleries, and from what I could tell, making a go of it. So that was kind of all I knew to try. So I just kept trying new galleries, shipping out paintings. I had 6 galleries carrying my work when we moved to Ojai, California here. And even with 6, which was more than I wanted, I wouldn't get a check every month. So I was just kind of going, how am I going to make this work so that ideally my wife could quit her job and take care of our kids, which, like I said, we only had one at the time. But that was the goal. And that had been about 10 years by that point of getting into galleries to the point where I was trying to make this decision. How can I make this a more consistent kind of an income situation? And so got some silence going. I don't know if you can hear that. So that's what sort of prompted me to wonder what to do next. And around that time, I met Josh Bean and a couple other guys up in Salida, Colorado. And they're fine artists who had opened their own galleries. And it really hadn't occurred to me before that would be a possibility. I didn't think of myself as a gallery person, but I suddenly thought, well, that might be a way to supplement, maybe still showing some other galleries, but maybe I could sell some stuff on my own that way. So I actually looked first in Colorado Springs, where we already lived, for commercial spaces, thinking about where's the most traffic, in the area. And I had seen some galleries come and go there. I'd shown in a couple of them for a while and had done okay, but I didn't feel like the clientele were necessarily big art buyers. It was, there are tourists there, but they're more of an ice cream crowd, maybe getting a t-shirt, but not necessarily buying art. And so I thought, well, maybe this isn't the best place to do it. Plus, the commercial spaces were still expensive. I mean, for a place in a prime spot, it was, I don't know, $1,800 a month or something. And I was like, well, I could try that. Like, I was kind of an option, but I talked to my wife and just said, what if I just explore and see what's out there, for other places where there might be traffic flow and, things that I could paint, but a more conducive market to people buying art. Now, that's something that you definitely can't know for sure. You have to sort of open the door at some stage and just go for it to see what happens. But that was how it started. I started just basically looking on a map, and I was going, where might there be a place that I wasn't looking for a big city, because I felt like to have a good location in a big city, you got to pay a lot of money. I mean, to be in a good location. So
Yeah,
I thought maybe
you
go
can pay
ahead.
25,000 or more for a
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you talk about someplace like Santa Fe, where there's a lot of other galleries, or if you talk about Santa Barbara, which is about 45 minutes from where I am here, yeah, a prime location, it might even be more than that. It could be 50,000 a month for a prime spot, where you're getting the best traffic flow. And obviously no artist can can just jump in and do that.
right.
So I knew that wasn't up on the table, and I thought maybe there's a little town somewhere that's either on the way to one of those places, or, a destination to a lesser extent. So that was really how I discovered Ojai initially. And I found some other places in California too that I thought maybe were possibilities. So I ended up just making a list of about 8 or 10 towns.
Uh-huh.
And my wife's, one of her sisters lived in LA area at the time. So we thought, let's go on a trip. Let's go there. We'll visit her, and we'll just rent a car and go to these different towns and figure out what do they feel like. Like maybe we can find actual spaces up for rent that we could look at. So that's what we did, and ended up coming for the first time to Ojai on that trip, and really liked it from the very beginning. It's a small town, about 8,000 people. But in the whole valley here, there's probably maybe closer to 30,000. We're about 90 miles from Los Angeles downtown. So it's an easy day trip for Los Angeles folks to come up here. But we're still separate enough from the major city that you feel like you're out in the country. There's lots of citrus orchards, and you feel like you're in a more rural kind of area. So we liked the proximity of it right away. And I was kind of liking the idea of a smaller town, because I had grown up in a smaller town in New Mexico, and it just felt simpler and quieter. So anyway, on that trip, we happened to find the shop that I ended up renting had just come up for rent. There was another business in here, and
Oh, really? Just
we kind of, we ended up looking at another couple of spaces in town that were bigger than kind of what I was looking for and needed work. And I was like, I wasn't quite sold on even the exact location where they were. But this one, it was like the perfect size for one artist, and a little bit around the corner from the main drag. So, I mean, a half block around the corner. So a little cheaper than the main drag. And I thought all I had to do was paint it. And I thought this could actually be the one. And so my wife and I talked about it overnight and rented it the next day before we went back to Colorado.
no kidding.
Because, it was definitely a leap of faith, but I knew
Absolutely.
that was the first piece of the puzzle. Like if I could get a shop in the right spot and get my work in there, I hoped it would resonate. I mean, that's the other thing, you just don't know, you know. But my wife and I, we thought.
Ojai yet at that point? Had you even done any paintings of the area, or?
No, I had done no paintings, but it's a beautiful landscape, and I thought there's a lot to paint here. And so my feeling was people would probably buy paintings of Ojai, like California landscape paintings. And so I did do some research after that, and I talked to some of or maybe it was even before, but I called and talked to some of the other businesses in Ojai, and I discovered that several of them had been here for like 20 plus years. So I thought, well, there's got to be something keeping them going. And it's a tourism based place. We have a really big 5-star hotel resort, the Ojai Valley Inn. And so that brings a lot of wealthier people to the area. Plus the golf, like you said, and just getting out of the city, So I knew there was potential. I didn't know whether people would buy my paintings or not, but my wife and I thought, we have, enough money. We felt like we could probably make it for, I don't know, 8 months or a year. If we don't sell anything, we kept our house in Colorado. We thought we could just go back there, but at least we'll know that we tried it, you know?
Yeah.
And so we went back to Colorado, had to figure out where we were going to live, all that other stuff that you got to do to make a huge move like that. And I was so thankful that my wife was willing to go for it with me, because it was kind of our chance, I felt like, to see if I could support us as an artist, you know, if that was going to work out. And so she had to quit her job, and we did it. We moved. You know, I got the doors open, and I was just trying to get out as much as I could and do plein air paintings of Ojai Valley to, you know, try to fill up the gallery. So that was kind of what made that whole story happen.
Amazing. Now, I'm sure, you know, as you kind of get it open, and it takes a couple weeks, a month, a couple months. I don't know how long. What was the kind of the time frame between you signing that lease and actually getting up and running?
So it was January of 2011 when we rented it and went back to Colorado, and in April, we brought a truck out, moved all the stuff, and so basically I and my parents and another friend came out to just bring all the stuff. Sarah stayed in Colorado with our son. And so we got everything moved and found a place to live and moved in, and then zoomed back out there for our son's first birthday, and then came right back. And so it was May. So January to May was the time frame of getting the door open. And some of that was just all the time it took to wrap up and actually make plans to move when we hadn't done any of that, you know, preparation. So it was all of that, you know, timing to close everything down in Colorado, get everything moved and all of that. And so it was a few months. But I was pleased that within the first few weeks of opening the doors, I sold a couple little things, and I thought, cool, like, you know, people seem to be responding at least to not only welcome a new person, you know, to a little business in the area, but to respond to my work, you know, favorably. And at that time I had almost no paintings of Ojai yet. So it was nice to have people even liking what I had brought, you know, from before. So it was encouraging. And I think that's an important part of the story to talk about too, is just the fact that for any artist, we do have encouragements along the way. And I feel like if we didn't have encouragements along the way, we would probably all give up because
Sure.
I think we realize, you know, we have to be kind of critical of our own work, and some of us can be really hard on our own work. And so if we don't have a little good feedback now and then, you know, we can, I think, easily just go, well, what's the point, you know? So I felt really encouraged once we got here and did that whole thing and started seeing some good responses, and people would say, wow, you were so brave to do that and to come and open. And I thought, well, I hadn't really thought about it that way. It just seemed like the right thing to do to me. You know, I thought, well, this is my chance to see if I can make it. And yes, it was a risk, but I felt like it was the right move at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's really amazing. I'm sure a certain amount of with some business ventures and things I've done, I'm glad I was kind of naive about it.
Yeah.
I knew how much work some of the decisions that I've made would be down the road. I probably I'm sure you feel that way to some degree about the gallery, but at the same time, at least, you know, talking with you more than just this interview, but that it's been just a great decision, you know, as you look back, and it, like you say, you had, at least from the opening doors, you started to see some movement,
right?
And, some paintings selling. And I'm curious, I'd kind of like your take, because you first, you know, for years you had, you were in 6 galleries, so you had kind of a, you know, interactions with other galleries and things, and then going to owning your own gallery. I'm assuming at this point, because you're pretty established with your gallery and things, and it seems to be working well, that you're not shipping them to other places. I mean, there's a better chance of you selling your work in your gallery than there is maybe somewhere else. It seems like your momentum is going really well, and let me know if that's wrong, but that's my impression. I'm just curious how, trading the, putting it into the hands of all these galleries versus,
Right.
going a little bit more, how that has, how that's gone, and how
Yeah.
you see the advantages and things like that.
That's a great question, and I think I do still work with 3 other galleries. So for me, it's really been a trade-off of getting the work in front of people, and so obviously that's an important factor for you as a fine artist. You got to have people see your paintings, and you got to try to have people see them who might actually buy them, not just any person, but people who might actually be an art buyer. So that again was part of my idea with Ojai, was how I felt like the clientele would be a little bit more art savvy. And I don't know if that's just because there's more people here, or it's because it's a little bit of a wealthier area, or there is kind of a legacy of plein air painting in California too, which I feel like is an advantage. People are more aware of it, and they'll come in and poke their head and go, "Oh, do you have plein air paintings?" So it was kind of refreshing for that aspect too. But it's definitely an advantage to be able to sell directly to your customers, because you don't have a middleman. You're not paying a commission to somebody. But I knew right away, because I still had those other galleries when we moved, I knew I needed to try to be fair in my pricing so that I wasn't, slashing by 50%, and selling cheap and then sending to galleries and having them sell at the higher price. You know what I mean? So, I told them all the galleries I was in, I called them and I said, I'm opening my own gallery. I just want you to know that. I'm still gonna, want to work with you and everything. And they were all fine with that. And it really is just a different set of customers. So in my mind, it started becoming more an idea of what market am I going after? And so obviously my California market here responds best to California paintings. I have had some success selling California paintings in other markets, but it seems to make more sense. There's a gallery that I work with in Santa Fe. There's one in Crested Butte, and then one in Pasadena. And so the Crested Butte, the Colorado gallery, and the Santa Fe gallery, I've tried to think about painting things with them in mind for their market, more than sending them a California coastal painting. They'll just sell better with a painting for their market. And I will say I am not good at predicting what is going to sell, but I do try to paint that way so that I'm thinking about what market might this particular scene do best in. And there's a few types of scenes that obviously could sell anywhere. You do a lot of still lifes, things that really can be sort of universal. They don't rely on a specific location necessarily to sell. But I've learned a lot about interacting directly with people with my own gallery. And there are some challenges with that too, because there are things you can't say about yourself that another gallery could say about you. Right. Without you would just sound arrogant, right, trying to toot your own horn too much. And so I've learned to
how do you get around that? Because I think that can be, for a lot of artists, maybe it could be a scary part of it, right?
Right.
The reason ultimately a lot of artists choose to go have other galleries represent them is they don't want to talk about their work. And I'm curious how you've kind of worked through that. And obviously you're able to do it to some degree of success, or you wouldn't have this gallery all these years. Right. First of all, how many years have you had the gallery so far?
9 years. Yep. 9 years so far.
That's amazing. I think there's so many galleries that in the first 5 years open that close, the majority.
Right.
So too, once you hit your 10-year anniversary, I think you're in a new league.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I've been really thankful that we have made it. And I do need to say, like, it's still an up and down business. It's not, you just don't know what's coming. And so we've had a lot of years and a lot of months where you're like, man, nothing is happening. And it's very easy to start second guessing what you're doing. My wife always gets on me at those times and is like, you always start doing this. You need to just keep working, keep painting. It's gonna get better. But it's so easy. And I don't know if you deal with that too, but like I said, without some kind of regular encouragements, it's very easy to just fall into that idea of, man, maybe I should be painting like that guy, like he's doing really well, or maybe my framing is wrong, or maybe you just start going through this thing of like, what can I change to somehow be more successful? And so there are certain aspects you can control having your own gallery, because you get to have your own show all the time. You can hang up what you want to hang up.
Yeah.
You're the one interacting with the people coming in. And there are still things though that you can't control. You don't know who's going to come in your door. And so you have to develop some sense of confidence in what you're doing. Yeah. And the direction that you're going in. And I know that was a challenge for me for a long time. And I know that because I would get so many people telling me what they thought I should be doing. And as I've looked back on it.
Patrons or other artists, or who coming in?
Some of both, I think, some of both. Oh. Well, maybe not patrons necessarily, but people who could be customers, and then other artists. But I look back on that and I go, I bet I just was coming off as so like, unconfident that they felt like I needed advice. And so they'd be like, you know what you should do? Yeah. And, it would be paint this, or have you ever tried that? Or, and I'd be going in my mind going, I have already thought of all these, possibilities. But anyway, so to go back to your question of how do you handle representing your own work? Yeah. I think for me, it's learned what not to say, because it's so easy to just start talking. And people come in, I greet them, I try to just, welcome them, tell them that I'm the artist, because I feel like that is nice to just get out there. I'll just say, it's all my own work. Let me know if you have questions. Because otherwise they sort of stumble into that knowledge halfway through, and then they might feel stupid because they didn't know. So I just put it out there, and then I just try to keep busy with something so that they don't feel like I'm latching on to them. Yes. So if I see that they do start to connect with a certain piece, I've tried to learn to not distract them from that piece. And that can be kind of hard at first, because my tendency is, oh, but come look at the new one I have on my easel. Yeah. But if they're connecting with one that's hanging, the better choice is talk about that painting, and give a comment about it, do something to get that, conversation going, rather than to try to get them to look at something different. So that was something that I learned pretty early on. Yeah. And other than that, I've tried to just kind of let the paintings speak for themselves. I don't feel like I'm a salesperson, but I do think people like to meet the artist, and they like to be able to ask questions about the particular piece, so I just try to be that, give them those answers. And it's turned into a pretty interesting and a refreshing way of doing it, because I'm thankful that I get to know some of the people buying. Right. And then I have them as customers ongoing. So I can easily, send emails. I can keep connecting with these people. Right. Versus with most other galleries, you send off your painting. If it sells, awesome, but you don't really know who bought it. Yeah, you have no idea who had it. And you don't know what they might have said about it, or what they might have thought of your other work. I mean, you don't get any of that feedback. So you're kind of almost blindly sending out and hoping for good things, but you don't get anything to go on necessarily, unless things are just selling and you're going, okay, that must be a popular thing. So
Yeah.
I still think there's a value there in selling through other galleries, because again, they can promote you in a way that you can't promote yourself. And they are exposing your work to a whole set of customers who you wouldn't be able to get it in front of otherwise.
Yes.
So it's still a benefit there. But anyway, does that kind of answer your question?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
one thing I'm curious about, because I'm going to give you this opportunity to, I want you to talk about some of those things that kind of have helped you, maybe milestones or awards and things that you've been able to do that I want you to talk about them, even though maybe if you prompted it might look
right.
I think I'd love to hear about some of those things that kind of helped, because they do matter, right? To give you encouragement to go move to another state and start again, right?
Right. Well, I feel like for me, there were things that happened kind of at strategic times. So one of them was I actually got an award in high school for a drawing that I did. This was before I knew anything about what you could do with art. But I had a high school art class. I did a drawing for kind of our statewide competition that my school hosted. It was a small Christian school, and they had this annual event where they would have academics and music and art kind of a competition. And so my art teacher said, you should enter something. And so I entered this little pen and ink drawing and got first place, which I thought, oh, that's great. And then it was able then to go on to the national portion of this competition, which ended up, it won first place at that too. And that was really helpful for me, because at that time I had no idea what I wanted to do for college. I was like, well, I guess I should go to college, but I don't know what to study. I didn't feel like I had any big draw toward anything, but having that happen at that time, which I feel like was, important, I thought, okay, well, maybe I should try art for college. And so that helped me start out that direction. And then after I was back in Colorado after college, and I had met those other artists at that little art school, I got a painting into Arts for the Parks. Did you ever do any Arts for the Parks, Brian?
Here years ago.
Yeah, I don't think they do it anymore, but it was a huge show for a while. That was the show that Richard Schmid won.
Right.
One year, for like $100,000 or something he won.
Yeah, big award.
So it was a major show. And I remember I was so new to it, but I had this artist friend in Colorado Springs who said, Dan, you should enter it. I'm going to enter it. You should enter it too. So I got it together, did a painting, entered it, and I got in. I got into the top 100 of the Arts for the Parks. And I thought it was kind of amazing, because they put your work in a catalog, like it goes to this show. It was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And anyway, that was another piece that kind of encouraged me to keep going, because I thought, hey, it was all this new world of fine art. And I remember walking through that show and looking at paintings by all these other artists that I admired, and just was kind of blown away that I was a part of it,
Right.
So that was a helpful encouragement. And then I remember when I quit my graphic design job to paint full time. I don't remember the specific thing, but I think I had somebody, I feel like, who came to my studio and bought paintings like right around that time, right after I had quit my job, and it encouraged me to, like, this is the right direction. People are responding to what to that decision. One of the bigger awards that I won was first place in the American Impressionist Society show that was in Denver. That was before we moved to California.
Yeah.
That was a pretty big award that I did not expect. I don't think you ever expect an award like that, but that type of thing, it just kind of fuels you on, and you have some gratification and excitement to keep going. So those were some of the higher highlights, I think.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And I guess, are there discrete ways that you can actually, as a gallery, that you represent yourself? Can you put those in a spot where you don't have to say it, but they're kind of there?
Actually, when I do my little price tags, if I have a painting that was at a show or got an award, I'll put a little tag that actually says it. This painting was part of this show or got an award here. And so that way, if people are looking closely and are reading, they can see that. Or sometimes I'll say it. I'll say, "Oh, that painting actually got an award at a show." So I don't mind saying something like that. And it sometimes people find that, interesting.
Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
with the gallery kind of flow, do you feel like you're in kind of a flow mode where you kind of know what your production days look like, and how to work with people coming in and interrupting you? And I'm just curious that part of it, that can you still feel like you're creative and be the person that walks people through
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
Yeah, I should make that clear, because so my gallery is a studio and a gallery. So the front room is I've set it up as the gallery.
Yeah.
The back room obviously has paintings up on the walls too, but that's where my easel is. So I'm able to actually paint while I'm here at the gallery. And that is a huge factor there are some artists who would not want to handle that. They wouldn't want to have that sense of always potentially being interrupted. So there is that element that obviously you have to have the right kind of temperament, I guess, to be willing to let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think inched my way that direction, because partly from teaching, like I got to, teaching workshops and things, I found that it didn't bother me that much to have someone watching me work. And I think it kind of also, you get used to people seeing things half done. And so you don't feel quite as worried that, they're going to judge you for, for seeing your half done painting. So the balance of knowing that someone who's coming in that door might actually buy a painting, I think is of greater importance than me being interrupted with my work. So I've just found that it's a good enough trade-off for me, that if I have to be interrupted, but I might sell a painting, I mean, that's why I have the gallery open in the first place. So to me, it's kind of a benefit, but it does affect how I work a little bit. And I've mainly just kept my regular business hours, and that's sort of when I'm here. I'll have the door open and I'll be painting.
Say you go on a plein air trip or something like that, I guess you'll just close it. You can close it up.
Yeah.
But being a retail space, you don't necessarily have to have a schedule or anything. Something happens, you want to just go out and paint, I guess you could just say you're closed, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll have a friend open it who's willing to come and open it, at least on the weekends when it's the busiest.
Yeah.
But I found it's not bad even just to close it, because people can always come back. It's not the type of thing that they're needing that day. So, even though you feel like, man, I don't want to miss a sale, it's not a huge deal to have to close it.
Live life, I guess, at a certain level as well, right?
Yeah, and I do try to be consistent, as much as I can.
I imagine you also have certain weekends, having gone through the, 9 revolutions of the sun here, certain months, certain weekends, certain days that will be more, you'll have more traffic than other times. What do you do also? So I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Just understanding of that. But also, like, if there's a seasonal aspect to it, and do you have your other galleries that represent you? Are they ones that kind of complement the seasons, or do you find just there's enough sales throughout certain times of the year that you're able to kind of even it out throughout the year and make it work for you? I'm just gallery stuff goes up and down, right?
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
How do you kind of smooth out those peaks and troughs?
Like I said, yeah, that's a part of it you can't control well. because you just never know when someone's going to buy a painting anywhere. So for me, it's been more about keeping my costs as low as I can. So I just run the gallery myself. You know, I don't have any employees. I've tried to just, you know, keep spending down so that for those slow times, eventually it evens out. And so you'll have, you know, you might have a month, I might have a month where I sell one 6x8 the whole month. And then I might have a month where I think the highest for me was like 18 or 19 paintings I sold one month.
Wow.
And so it's a huge shift. And the only trend that I've kind of figured out is probably February or March through about May or June. That springish, late winter, springtime is the best for sales in terms of people in Ojai, at least.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't have a total amazing sale on some random August, you know, 100-degree day.
Yeah.
Because that's happened too. But that's the only thing I've kind of figured out. So as far as the other galleries go, I feel like I have even less control over what's happening there. So I've tried to just, you know, keep them as stocked as I can with what I feel like are good enough paintings. And
do you kind
that's
of
about all I can do for that.
Do you have a rotation kind of thing that you like to try and do with, you know, show it here in the gallery first and then send it out? Or it just depends on demand? Or
I guess I don't. I kind of just do it case by case. So if I have paintings I feel like will work in a particular place, I'll try to set them aside for them. Or lately I've been actually shipping paintings out at the same sizes of some of the paintings that gallery already has, so they can keep the frame, swap the painting out, send me back just the panel. And that's a way of swapping things in a cheaper way than having to send the whole framed thing and have them send back the whole other framed thing, which actually simplifies things a bit, because you already know what size you need to fill, and you can just paint something that size, which I think makes it a little easier. So that's been, I think, kind of welcome to the other galleries too, because they've been, you know, struggling through this whole pandemic thing too, and they don't want to be spending money shipping any more than I do. So
I like that is true. It's very hard, easy to ship a painting to a gallery, very hard to get it back.
Yes.
Yeah. Paintings back.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to be there at least a year.
Yeah. And you just have no control.
Sell, right? If they sell, great, but
right.
Paintings that are, there's always a painting or two that's going to hang around for a long time, and I think that's a good pro tip. And I'm curious, any other, we only have a couple minutes left, literally maybe 2 minutes. Again, there's so much good information here. What are there any, you know, just kind of final words, any kind of pro tips, like, okay, I went and did this, and somebody comes to you right now and says, hey, I want to open my own gallery. What would you suggest to just avoid and make sure and do?
The most important things would be location. You have to have it in a location that gets traffic. So location, and, you know, keeping the cost down.
Yeah.
You've got to keep your costs down, because you just don't know what's coming. And then I think the factor of working with that possible interruption idea is important, because it, you know, it does affect, and some artists would maybe, I mean, you could open a gallery, have a studio somewhere else, and try to balance it that way, so that when you're at the gallery, you're only at the gallery. But I've kind of enjoyed having both, you know, being able to work while I'm here. And I think people enjoy that too. They love seeing stuff in progress, and kind of a behind the scenes sort of, oh, wow, look at, oh, this is the kind of panels that you use, or, you know, let me see the kind of paint you have, or let me look at your palette. Like, it's interesting for people. And I think that's another huge thing that I've enjoyed about having my gallery, is being able to show people that you can be an artist if you want to. I mean, like I said, I didn't grow up around that. So even for families who come in with kids, for the kids to go, oh wow, like I could be an artist someday. I think that's been really neat, and especially for the fact that there's just a lot of people, I mean, around the world, but obviously focusing on the US, who don't have a big connection to art. So I think it's neat too, just for regular people walking by, even if they're not going to buy anything, to just go, oh wow, look, he goes out and paints these paintings. Like, it's so cool. So it's just another way of, enriching people's idea of what's possible.
Right. And I think that's one thing, there's people that know about plein air painting, know these artists, and they're kind of involved in this tribe. But the large majority, 99%, I would say, have no idea about this stuff until they kind of meet somebody like out in the wild.
Right. And sometimes, they have no clue on the pricing, and I can hear them outside my window. Whoa, $600. That's crazy, and I'm going, it's actually pretty cheap, like relatively speaking, you know what I mean? And so that's important too, to be able to, like, if they come in, you can have that discussion and talk about, well, here's kind of why this is the way the pricing is, or, you can actually answer some of those questions for people, which just clears things up in their mind. Even if they don't know anything else about art, they kind of start to get an idea of that validity of the pricing structure. It's not just random. It's it's all thought out. It's all planned for a reason. And so so those kinds of things are great to be able to share with people, and again, to develop that relationship over time, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we've I can't believe it's been an hour already.
I know.
All your insights. We're gonna have to do a part 2 at some point. I really appreciate you sharing all that and being willing to talk about it, because I know, at least when I kind of put my ear to the ground with a lot of artists, not only here in the US, but around the world, a lot of people are trying to figure out what the best way to go. And I think this is really great to talk about, because it's a very viable option for people to represent themselves. And, just having you as this example, and again, I can't understate the, I mean, to go to a place like you did, and have it work, and do whatever you needed to do to make the gallery work. I think it's amazing, and it's something that's enviable that you've been able to accomplish. So look forward to the next decade of your.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. You never know what's coming, but thankful to be able to do it so far.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Dan. And so Dan,
thank you, Brian.
Is his workshop. Again, it's full, so I don't know if you can get into that, but you can definitely go take his course on sentientacademy.com. It was just released. Definitely recommend it. Dan is an excellent teacher. As you can see, he articulates himself well. He's just a great person, great guy, and just super willing to help and share his knowledge with us. And we're really grateful to have you do that. So thanks so much, Dan. We will
thank you.
stay in touch.
All right. Sounds